Climate change. It's real, it's serious, and it's up to us to solve it. In the last 2 decades, we've experienced 14 of the hottest 15 years on record. By 2050, drought and chronic water shortages could impact 1 billion people, while millions more will be at risk from coastal flooding. It can seem overwhelming, but there's reason for hope. Reimagining our world's energy future will take a shared sense of urgency from countries, companies, cities, and all of us. Working together, real change is possible.
Asia and the Pacific is the most disaster-prone region in the world. Sea levels are rising by up to 8 millimeters per year in some parts of the Pacific. Over 15 years, cyclones in the Arabian Sea have become more frequent and more intense. Changes in the Earth's climate have been ascribed to natural variation, but also to global warming. There has been a 3/4-degree rise in the average temperature of the Earth since the 1880s, and scientists predict this may rise to between 2 and 4 degrees by the end of the century. Less dramatic but no less costly are patterns of development that are squandering nature's natural capital. Its fish, farmland and forest, its freshwater and fresh air. Last time on Nature Inc., we saw how the Pacific state of Kiribati was preparing for evacuation. And in the Indian state of Gujarat, we reported on steps being taken to head off environmental disaster. This time, we're in the Philippines and Vietnam. We find that communities are making preparations for a more extreme world. The Philippines is one of the most disaster-prone countries in the world. And Albay, with its active volcano, is one of the most disaster-prone regions in the Philippines, suffering from frequent typhoons, floods, volcanic eruptions, earthquakes and landslides. In 2006, Super Typhoon Reming hit Albay, claiming over 600 lives.
It was a traumatic devastation. It's beyond words. There are highways of death. The flash flood then associated with wall of volcanic debris are, as high as 20 to 30 feet, killing people. They are buried alive. The incident at that time was beyond words. In every places I went through, there are deaths.
Albay's governor, Joey Salceda, has pioneered a zero-casualty policy. His administration has adopted a killing 2 birds with 1 stone approach, investing in disaster risk reduction to make, claims the governor, people of his region safer and better off.
The maintenance of the zero casualty goal is one of the distinctive comparative advantages of Albay. Once there is a signal, like signal number 1, and it's strong, it's gonna hit us, we evacuate. And because once you evacuate in the midst of a disaster, it's no longer an evacuation, it is a rescue.
While climate skeptics play down the link between global warming and the increased frequency of extreme weather events, the people of Albay are in no doubt about the change in their weather.
30 years ago, the weather was quite different. But today, the typhoons are getting stronger. The weather's very erratic. It's very dangerous now to go fishing.
Canal systems full of rubbish and other debris restrict runoff and clog drains, adding to the devastation caused by storms and floods. One measure the governor claims is reaping benefits is the government-sponsored Food for Work program aimed at low-income families. Running since 2006, each volunteer gets a 5-kilo bag of rice for a day's work clearing the canals.
The Earth is a beautiful and complex planet, home to some extraordinary and precious sights. But over the last few years, scientists have become increasingly convinced that climate change created by mankind has the potential to alter our world forever. The driving force behind Earth's climate is energy from the sun. Energy travels from the sun in the form of shortwave infrared radiation. Some of it doesn't get through the Earth's atmosphere, but lots of it does, and it's then absorbed by the land and the oceans and warms them up. The Earth re-radiates the energy back in the form of long-wave infrared radiation. But gases in the Earth's atmosphere, called greenhouse gases, trap some of that radiation. They act like an invisible insulating blanket around the Earth. This effect is perfectly natural, and if the greenhouse gases weren't there at all, global temperatures would be 20 to 30 degrees centigrade colder than they are now, probably too cold for life on Earth to survive. There's a delicate balance between how much energy reaches Earth and how much is returned into space. If the balance changes, it has a profound effect on global climate. There have always been natural variations in climate since long before humans evolved. Other factors affect how much energy we get from the sun. For example, when volcanoes erupt, they can blast huge amounts of sulfur dioxide gas into the atmosphere. There, a chemical reaction creates tiny particles known as aerosols. They reflect energy from the sun, making the Earth cooler. Everyone agrees there are lots of different natural factors that affect the Earth's climate. But some scientists have argued for many years that mankind is also having an effect.
Our planet now is really different to how it looked 300 years ago. For a start, the population now is much bigger. The world's population today is about 6.5 billion people. 300 years ago, that was only about 650 million. There's so much more technology around today. There's been the Industrial Revolution. We've used all these fossil fuels. We're now completely reliant on them to carry out actions in our everyday life, to heat our home, to go to school. All these different things require fossil fuels.
In fact, 3/4 of the energy we use in the UK comes from fossil fuels. And fossil fuel use is a global issue too.
Another, what some may see as a problem into the future, is that countries, rapidly developing countries like China and India, they've got really big populations that are rapidly increasing. And all these populations, all these people, they're going to naturally want to have the sort of lifestyle change that we've had. They're going to want to swap their bikes for cars. They're going to want all the domestic appliances that we've sort of got used to and that have made our lives easier.
When fossil fuels are burned, they produce a gas called carbon dioxide, also known as CO2. The human race is now producing quite incredible quantities of carbon dioxide, over 7 gigatons a year. Carbon dioxide is one of the greenhouse gases that are found in the atmosphere quite naturally. But for some time, scientists have argued that all the extra carbon dioxide produced by burning fossil fuels is making the insulating blanket around the Earth too effective. It means that less energy escapes back into space. Instead, the trapped energy heats up the Earth's climate, producing climate change. Other things that humans are doing have also increased the amount of carbon dioxide in the atmosphere. Until recent times, A lot of the Earth's carbon dioxide has been absorbed into plants and trees as they use it to make food during photosynthesis. It's been an important way of keeping carbon dioxide locked away instead of up in the atmosphere. But all over the world, forests have been cut down to make way for farming and for towns and cities. The biggest tropical rainforest in the world is the Amazon in South America. It's the same size as Western Europe, but huge areas of it are being cut down every year so the land can be used for agriculture. And there are fears that the remaining forest is increasingly at risk of drying out. There are so many different factors involved in climate change that it's hard for scientists to predict exactly how much global average temperatures will increase in the future. Just for example, the scientists can't predict how humans will behave. Will we be prepared to cut back on our use of fossil fuels? Or are we too addicted to our current way of life to do that? What scientists do know is that even small temperature changes could have very big effects on the planet. One example is in the polar regions, where there are vast amounts of ice. Ice reflects a lot of the light that reaches it. This means the ice stays cool because the energy is not absorbed. But now, because of climate change, there are large areas of the polar regions, like here in the Arctic, where there is less ice than there used to be. Instead, there's just open ocean. The dark ocean surface absorbs a lot of the light energy from the sun, which warms up the ocean, and that in turn helps to make the planet warmer. That means it's less likely that ice will be formed, and so the oceans will absorb more energy and become even warmer.
This is a simple explanation of climate change, based on an article in the New York Times. The average temperature on the surface of the planet has already increased 1.7 degrees Fahrenheit since 1880, which may not seem like much, but think about it this way. The heat from human emissions is roughly equal to 400,000 Hiroshima atomic bombs exploding across the planet every single day. Future generations are in big trouble. But for now, it'll gradually continue to get warmer and storms will grow more intense, with longer periods of drought in between. But longer term, if emissions continue to rise unchecked, the climate disasters will be so severe they will destabilize entire nations, send millions of refugees across borders, cause widespread extinction of most species on Earth, and melt the polar ice caps, leaving most of the world's coastal cities several feet underwater. All this could take centuries, but something like the sudden collapse of agriculture would trigger immediate chaos in society. Best case is we get our act together and begin to rapidly bring emission levels down. Meanwhile, Earth turns out to be less sensitive to greenhouse gases than we currently believe, plants and animals adapt quickly, and major technological breakthroughs help society limit emissions and adjust to climate change. But these are all the opposite of what we're actually seeing, so the only thing in our control is to limit emissions using all available tools and best behaviors currently at our disposal. Worst case, the collapse of food production causes spiraling prices, and as our capitalist utopia breaks down, billions starve as our world gets violent and messy real quick, kind of like a zombie apocalypse, but with extreme hunger spreading chaos instead, so yeah, still just like a zombie apocalypse. This would be coupled with the melting of the Antarctic ice sheet, leading to rapidly rising seas that would force us to abandon many of our greatest cities and all of the social and scientific progress that we were making within them. Adding insult to injury is the fact that many of the emissions were emitted while building these now abandoned underwater metropolises. If emissions continue unchecked, we're looking at a total rise of between 80 to 160 feet, which would occur if all the ice in the poles melted. So the oceans will rise. The real question is how fast. Scientists only have Earth's history to base their predictions on, which suggests that the rate has occasionally hit 1 foot per decade, so we'll have to adapt to an altered coastline sooner or later, but probably much sooner than later, because computer forecasts only give us a range of future possibilities. The most important evidence comes from the study of past climate conditions, which clearly show that every time the amount of carbon dioxide in the air rises, the Earth warms up, ice melts, and the ocean rises. What's important to remember here is that we are in uncharted territory. Humans are pumping carbon dioxide into the air far faster than nature ever has before us. Scientists have been publishing strong evidence that warming is making drought and heat waves more frequent, causing heavier rainstorms and more severe coastal flooding. But while the internet has made us all more aware of weather disasters in distant countries, it's hard to prove these are all directly made worse by climate change. Canada and Russia both have vast frozen lands and could see some economic benefits from a warmer climate. Putin and the Russians, and until recently Canada as well, have been reluctant to make ambitious climate commitments, but expect that to change as these countries realize they will be swamped by millions of refugees from less fortunate nations. Libertarians and other political conservatives do not like the policies proposed to fight climate change, and have chosen to try and block them by actively undermining the science. This effort has been funded by the oil and coal industry, who favor making money above all else. As more resources are devoted to solving the problem, our chances at big technological breakthroughs are improving, but we still should be spending about 3 times as much money as we currently are on these efforts, according to several in-depth reports. You can reduce your carbon footprint by doing things like plugging leaks in your home insulation, installing a smart thermostat, taking public transit, taking less airplane trips, buying an electric car, and putting solar panels on your roof. A big one is eating less meat. But what's really needed is for you to speak up and exercise your rights as a citizen, because strong, collective action through state and national policies is how we'll make the most impact. Considering that we've been ignoring scientists' warnings since the 80s to limit emissions, we're pretty late in the game. But we've finally reached a moment where nearly every country in the world agrees this is a huge problem and seem ready to commit to taking at least some kind of action. Leading corporations will continue to make bold promises to do their part, low-emission technologies will improve, and many states and cities will go much further than any goals set by their national governments. The United States, the world's biggest economy, is finally starting to move aggressively, and China, the world's largest emitter, is beginning to recognize that it needs to do the same, as many of its megacities will be underwater if the seas rise too high. But it's up to us, the ordinary citizens, to continue demanding our political leaders tackle climate change, the hardest problem that humanity has ever faced.
Earth is a beautiful living planet of the universe as a common habitat of human and millions of species with incredible biodiversity. Our Earth provides us with food, shelter, and with most of our needs to live. Our planet is very special, and humans are called to take care of all the creations dwelling in it because Earth is our only home, our common home. But what we see today is our common home hurt and exploited for profit and self-interest. The abuse and destruction of the earth has increased to the point where we have not only poisoned the earth and its creatures, but also ourselves. The biggest challenge that our Mother Earth is facing today is climate change. Since the beginning of human civilization, mankind has lived in a competitive relationship with nature. Humanity's relentless pursuit of progress, comfort, and security has resulted in increased stress on environment, particularly since the Industrial Revolution. Consequently, the life-sustaining environment has been forced to transform more rapidly than ever before. Every day, we produce tons of degradable and non-degradable wastes. There are so many factories that exhale destructive substances and pollutes the air. We destroy forests for agriculture and settlement. Human negative influence on ecology has resulted in the rapid increase of greenhouse gases in the atmosphere. Large-scale deforestation, loss of biodiversity, severe land degradation, and environmental pollution, ultimately leading to an ecological crisis capable of affecting the entire life and life support system existing on our planet, Earth. Climate is inherently variable. Climate differs from place to place. It varies with time. Solutions of environmental problems are possible if we are committed. We must take serious responsibilities towards Mother Nature as a global citizen so as to protect our living planet from deterioration. Our single efforts may seem small, but if thousands of people can unite together towards nature conservation, then one day, our efforts will be a drastic step to protect our motherland, Earth, from destruction. The noble Earth has bestowed the human beings with incredible and beautiful nature. The entire universe speaks of God's love, so we have to reflect on this. This is the reality that calls us to do more, a great challenge to be responded with love, to discern and evaluate our relationship with creation, a dialogue with creation to care for the earth. Let us together see, reflect, decide, and do something as an expression of our love to our common home, the earth.
Good day to all. I am Mary Josephine E. Cagurangan. I hail from Luzon with Tingyan, Ilocano, and Ibanag ethnic blood. I am now working as a lay missionary in the Silsila Dialogue movement, doing research and conducting trainings and formation in Dialogue with Creation and Center for Holistic Care. Focusing on the following advocacies: holistic science, indigenous genetic resource, ecological harmony for climate change adaptation and mitigation. Climate change is now the new normal, but is it a healthy, beautiful, and welcome new normal? Certainly not. Climate change is an awakening for all of us, people of God who are gifted with God-conscious intelligence and who are stewards of the earth and not its masters. The future of this planet is in our hands. If we move with good and loving intention, we can implement blessed eco-solutions and save life. But if we move with evil and greed, the earth is cursed. Therefore, we need to adapt to climate change and mitigate its effects on humankind. To do this, we have to understand the 4 laws of nature. The first law of nature states that everything is interconnected. As the only planet in the solar system that has life and vitality, the Earth is imbued with the 4 elements of life that are interconnected and which interact in harmonious and dynamic ways. These 4 elements are: first, the Earth, which is the solid part of life; water, which is the liquid part of life; air, which is the gaseous part of life; and fire, which is the energy of life or the life force. Each of these elements cannot exist without the other. The harmonious interaction of these elements is what makes life wholesome. However, if these elements are not harmoniously interacting with each other, energy blockages in the ecosystem occur, creating extreme conditions in the environments, such as extreme weather, extreme rise or drop in temperature level, extreme floods, and extreme typhoons, among others. We can trace the causes of this phenomenon. Climate change is caused by global warming. Global warming is caused by greenhouse gases. Greenhouse gases are produced by pollutants and toxic waste coming from homes, offices, and industries. Pollutants and toxic waste are produced by people who care less and do not manage their waste properly. Therefore, we, the people, are the main cause of the problem of climate change. Then we, the people who are gifted with intelligence and free will, can choose to be the solution and the answer. The second law of nature says, everything goes somewhere. Plants are God's silent giving life creatures that contribute to the harmonious breath of life by giving off oxygen that are breathed in by human beings and animals, and by absorbing carbon dioxide that causes pollution. Likewise, plants capture the life force from the sun through photosynthesis, and when eaten, they become sources of life-giving energy for humanity. And when a plant dies, where does it go? It goes back to the earth, decomposes, is transformed into humus soil and enriches this land, keeping alive and well the earth's life cycle. On the other hand, plastics and other non-biodegradable materials are man-made silent killers. When thrown into the earth as waste, where do they go? What happens to them? They remain in the earth. They do not break down, and they remain in their original form, clogging our waterways and causing floods. When burned, they emit carbon dioxide that causes pollution. As biochemist Veronica Vicentius said, during a coal plant consultation. We cannot bucket pollution. It always goes somewhere. It can always cause damage to life. So where do the pollutants go? To us, human beings, killing us softly. The third law of nature states that everything has a price. There is no such thing as free lunch, so to speak. Everything that we do comes back to us. Every garbage we mindlessly throw away, every open pit mining we do that destroys thousands of trees and pollutes kilometers of waterways, every cigarette stick we smoke that contributes to the greenhouse gas, and all the thousand other practices that hurt Mother Earth come back to us in one form or another. So today, we are now paying the price of the abuses we have done. The price we pay is climate change. We cannot escape these consequences. We can only try to deal with them appropriately right now, or it would be too late. The fourth law of nature is nature has the last say. We are now living in a new wave of modernity, dominantly dependent on synthetic substances. We try to redesign nature according to our own agenda by producing genetically modified organisms or GMOs, and by replacing indigenous organic fertilizers with synthetic ones that destroy the natural richness of the soil. These are only some of our schemes. We can play God and take away all that is natural in nature and replace them with what we think is better. But Mother Nature will put an end to man's madness and will have the final say. Right now, Mother Nature is saying, enough is enough. The warning made by the National Aeronautic State Administration, coming from the indigenous people of the North Pole, informing about Earth's shift cannot be ignored. This shift could be Mother Earth's way of restoring balance and harmony in nature at the expense of lives. After all, nature has the last say. If we do not listen, we will perish. Climate change, therefore, is a call and a tall order, especially for us, people who are imbued with God consciousness, to act with ethical concern for Mother Earth and for all of humanity with dispatch and with great love. This can be done if we embrace interfaith dialogue and dialogue with the whole of creation. Let us look at ourselves. Where are we now? Where do we want to go? How are we going to start a lifestyle to adapt and mitigate climate change? These questions will remain questions unless we decide and do something more. With this, thank you and move on.